Okay, I'm going to get started by welcoming everyone. Welcome to Wat Tung. Nice to see everyone here. Welcome to everyone joining online as well. What I'm going to be doing is over the next 3 hours introducing you to the teachings of the Buddha, helping you guys to be able to understand what the teachings are and what they are not. And then we're going to actually go into the first teaching of the Buddha, helping you guys to understand the problem that he discovered in the human mind, the cause of that problem, the elimination of it, and the path forward. Because everything in the path to enlightenment is all about training the mind. The Buddha is guiding you to this enlightened mental state, but you guys will understand what that is more after we talk, and I help you guys to understand the teachings of the Buddha. We start with meditation in this course and all the other programs that we share. I just guide you guys in a meditation session to give you guys a little opportunity to learn a little bit of the teachings of the Buddha and actually practice them. There's more than meditation that you would need in order to be able to get to enlightenment, but meditation is an important part of that. So we start each one of our classes with meditation. The way that I do this is I start with some chanting to ease us into the meditation, and you guys are welcome to join in the chanting if you like. They're on the laminated sheet over there on the cabinet. You're welcome to help yourself and get a laminated sheet, and you can chant along if you like. For those of you guys online, you'll find this on our website at buddhadailywisdom.com. Just click on free books, and then if you scroll down towards the bottom, you'll be able to see the daily chanting sheet there. So it looks like folks here are getting those. Just to give you guys a little bit of a background of where chanting comes from, is that during the lifetime of the Buddha, they did chanting every 2 weeks to be able to commit the teachings to memory. This is the way people were able to learn his teachings, that they sat with him in a discussion where he shared the teachings orally, and then they recited his teachings through chanting in order to commit them to their memory. Because there wasn't books and audiobooks, videos, podcasts, things like this. Those didn't exist during the lifetime of the Buddha, so they needed some way to be able to commit the teachings to memory. So they used chanting. So you can see from the origins of chanting that this isn't a rite, a ritual, or a ceremony, or worship, or prayer, or anything like that. You won't find any of those kinds of things in the teachings of the Buddha. If you've been exposed to those kinds of things as part of Buddhism, those are actually not the teachings of the Buddha. Those are misunderstandings that people are having regarding the teachings of the Buddha. He didn't teach any rites, rituals, ceremonies, worship, or prayer. So these chants, the way we use them today, as is a way to ease the mind into meditation and get more benefit out of the meditation itself. So if you choose to chant along, you'll see that it helps you to ease the mind into your meditation and get more benefit. If you read the English translations, you're going to see a lot of appreciation, gratitude, and respect for the Buddha, because I suspect that these were actually created by his students, either during his life or after his death, because the Buddha wouldn't have walked around and said, here, chant these things to me out of respect for me, right? This would be the ego and arrogance if somebody did this. And an individual who's gotten to enlightenment, they don't think of themselves as being above other people and look down on people. So the Buddha wouldn't have told his students to chant these things to him. But if you learn from a teacher how to move from anger and sadness and frustration and all these other discontent feelings to the peace and joy that is enlightenment, and this teacher didn't want anything from you or expect anything from you, you'd probably have a lot of appreciation, gratitude, and respect for that person too. So that's where I suspect that these chants came from, is probably his students, either during his life or after his death. So you're welcome to chant along as we go. That'll help you in your meditation, and then you'll be able to understand the origins of this, that it's not anything mystical or magical or any kind of rite, ritual, ceremony, worship, or prayer. In terms of your body position for meditation, there's 4 positions that the Buddha taught: seated, lying, standing, and walking, because you're not going to be able to be in the same position all the time. It's just not possible. So you're going to need these different positions at different times. It's kind of like a tool belt that you would have these different positions available to you. And as you journey on the path, you would learn these different positions. But oftentimes people are learning in the seated position. So I'm going to give you guys a little bit of guidance on the seated position so you understand how to be able to get the most benefit out of your meditation with your body position. It's important to know that there isn't just one fixed way to sit. While sitting meditation is a very common, very popular way to meditate, there's these other options as well. And there's not just one fixed way to do it. So you can sit however you're comfortable. What I'm going to share with you are just suggestions or recommendations for you to consider, but you can really sit however you like. Even if it's not anything that I've taught you, you can just sit however the body's comfortable, because you're training the mind. You're not training the body, you're training the mind. So you might sit on the floor, you might sit in a chair. If you're at home, you might be on a bench or a sofa in a wheelchair. These are all different options for you. But if you're on the floor, you might have some cushions under your rear. This is going to help soften your seat. And then if you're going to bring your legs together in the cross leg position, you like to just do that lightly, where if you're real tight with your lower legs, it can impede the circulation. It can cause pain in the lower body. Some people like to put their legs off the mat. This gets your hips up in the air, and it lessens the angle at the hips, the knees, and the ankles, allowing the circulation to flow. The Buddha put his right hand over his left with his thumbs together, and he put this into his lap. If this is comfortable for you, you could use it. But again, it's not about everyone doing it the same way. There's other options here as well. You could put your palms on your thighs or your knees. You could put your palms up. You could rest your hands comfortably in your lap. So these are all options for you. And then if you're in a chair or on a bench or a sofa or a wheelchair, there's many options for you as well. Some people like to put their feet flat on the floor or lightly crossed at the ankles, but you can see me sitting in a chair with my legs crossed, so this is an option for you as well. And then you can put your hands and arms wherever you like, and that would be whatever's comfortable for you would be best. In terms of your upper body, it's helpful if this is erect, with your sternum up and your shoulders back. It'll help keep your mind attentive and alert during the meditation, because this is a dedicated, active, purposeful training session where you're eliminating certain unwholesome qualities and you're cultivating certain wholesome qualities. So you like the mind to be attentive and alert during the meditation. Whereas if you were slouched, the mind would have a tendency to be dull or lethargic. But if you were real rigid, the mind could be overactive or uptight. So you'd like the upper body to be in the middle with the sternum up and the shoulders back, because not only will it keep the mind attentive and alert, but it'll make it easy for you to breathe in through the nose and out through the nose. So after the chanting, I'm going to come in with some guidance where I'm going to be essentially teaching you and instructing you how to meditate while we're actually meditating. Then there's going to be a period of time where it's just quiet and we're all meditating together. Everyone here and anyone who's joining us online will just all be meditating. During that period of time of quietness, I'm sure you'll hear an occasional sound, like maybe a car going by, a dog barking, the bird chirping or something. Maybe someone will cough or sneeze here. This is all normal. This is impermanence, where if your mind craves permanent silence during your meditation, you will cause your mind to be frustrated or annoyed during the meditation. So if you understand the world around you is impermanent and it's constantly changing, you can be at ease and be completely peaceful during your meditation, even when you hear a sound. So during that period of time of quietness, I'm sure you'll hear occasional sounds. Then we're going to come out of that meditation with some more chanting. And then that's where I'll start the class and helping you guys to understand all the ins and outs of the teachings of the Buddha, just getting started with this introduction. So again, I'm going to chant on the way in. If you guys would like to join, you're more than welcome. And then I'll come back in with the guidance. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Bhagava Wat Tung Aphivateyami Savakato Bhagavata Tammo Dhammang Namasami Supatipano Bhagavato Sāvaka Saṅkho Saṅghang Namami Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato สัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะอิติปิโสมะคะวะอะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธวิชาจารณังสัมมุโนสกขาโตโรกาวิตุอนุเตโรปุริสาดามาสติสัตตาตาวามนุสนังโอโตภะคะวะติ Okay, with the lower body and hands and arms comfortable, in the upper body erect, just close the eyes and start breathing in through the nose and out through the nose. Here you're just looking to establish the breath, a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. Not forced or controlled, just a gradual inhale through the nose, experiencing the full breath. And then whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. Your breath may not match up with the guidance that I'm providing, and that's okay. This is your practice. I'm just here for guidance. You can use this voice as a reminder that whenever you get to the next inhale, breathing gradually through the nose, developing a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. And then whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose, experiencing the full breath. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the breath well established, start fixating the mind on the breath, either the sound of the breath coming into the nose or the sensation moving over the skin into the nose. The breath is the present moment. Fixate the mind on the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the mind fixated on the breath, whenever you notice that it moves off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. No need to observe the thought, label it, judge it, analyze it, or even try to figure out where it's coming from. Whenever you notice that the mind is moved off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. I'm going to be quiet now and let you do this work of focusing on the breath, cutting off and letting go anytime the mind moves off the breath. You have nowhere to go. There's nothing to do. No one needs you right now. This is your time to focus on the breath. Breathing in and out. อะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธมหาเกวาโพตังมหาเกวันหังอภิวาเทมิสวากขาโตมหาเกวตาธัมโมธัมมังนามัสสามิสุปฏิปันโนมหาเกวโตสาวกสังโฆสังฆังนามามินะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะอิติปิโสมหาเกวาอะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธวิจาจารณังสัมมุโนสกขาโตโรกาวิตุอนุเตโรปุริสาดัมมาสติสัตตาตาวามนุสนังโอโตภะคะวะติ Okay, if you guys would like to slowly make your way out of meditation, once again, welcome to everyone. Welcome to everyone online as well. This is called Breathing Mindfulness Meditation. We'll talk a bit about what this is as we get going in our course here today. But what I'm going to do is just start out helping you guys to understand what is a Buddha. That's going to be a great place for us to start, because if you're interested in understanding the teachings of the Buddha, it's nice to know what is an actual Buddha. So I'm going to explain to you guys what a Buddha is, and then I'm going to move into explaining what the teachings of the Buddha are and what they are not. We're going to take like a little break, and then we're going to come back and I'll share with you the very first teaching of the Buddha. And as we go throughout our course, I'm going to pause a few times, opening up for questions, because you guys are going to probably need to ask questions to get clarification on anything that I'm sharing with you. If you guys would like to ask questions at any point, if you guys could use the microphones, we have microphones in a white bowl over there by the bookshelf. That way the people online will actually be able to hear you. If you speak here without a microphone, they won't be able to hear you. All you need to do is get a microphone, bring it back to your seat. You press the gray button. There's going to be some lights that come on, and you can hold it up to your chin, and we'll be able to hear you here at the temple. They'll be able to hear you online. And then if you're not using the microphone, if you could just turn it off, that way we won't get any feedback from the speakers. And you can keep the microphones with you, because you might have more than one question, or someone around you might have a question, and you can just share it with the people around you. And then for those of you guys that are online, if you would like to ask questions, you can put that into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom in the comment section. I'll be able to see that and answer your question. Or in Zoom, you can electronically raise your hand and ask any and all questions that you like. So what a Buddha is they're an individual, a human being, who's gotten to enlightenment by themselves without the help of any teachers or any guides. Through their own wisdom, they're able to figure out how to get to this enlightened mental state. Then once they've gotten to that enlightened mental state by themselves, they then share their independently discovered teachings with countless people, helping countless people to be able to get to enlightenment during that person's lifetime. Then they will preserve their teachings in such a way that countless more people will get to enlightenment after their death. So this is the three primary criteria that make a Buddha, is that they get to enlightenment by themselves without the help of any teachers or any guides. They dedicate the rest of their life to sharing their independently discovered teachings with countless people, and countless people will get to enlightenment during that person's lifetime. Then they will preserve their teachings in such a way that countless more people will get to enlightenment after their death. So at the end of this life, if you get to enlightenment, you can be enlightened, but you won't be a Buddha at that point. There's some places that will tell you that everybody is a Buddha, but the Buddha never actually taught this. There's other criteria too of what makes a Buddha, and you can see that by the time you get to enlightenment, you won't meet these same three criteria, but you will have some of these criteria down here, not all of them, but some of them. For example, a Buddha actually has this criteria right here, where the average person doesn't actually have this. This is where what actually allows the individual to get to enlightenment by themselves without the help of any teachers or any guides. An individual who's going to become a Buddha, they have a deep, profound memory, even in the unenlightened state. By the time you get to enlightenment, you'll have a very good memory. Your memory will be very refined and crisp and sharp. But even in the unenlightened state, an individual who's going to become a Buddha, they have a very deep, profound memory. They can remember countless details about their current life and their past lives too. And they bring together all that wisdom in their last life to be able to get to enlightenment by themselves. That's how they get to enlightenment without teachers, is they accumulate wisdom over multiple lifetimes. So for example, if you think about your mind right now, you probably can remember the last 5 years, 10 years or so about what you've been up to and what you're doing. But if you think back into your childhood, you probably just have spotty memories where you can kind of remember things here and there, but you don't have direct recall of all the different things that you were doing during your childhood, right? This is because in the unenlightened state, or even in the enlightened state for an average being, they have a limited capacity to their memory. You might think of it like a hard drive that maybe 500 gigabytes or 1 terabyte. And then when you reach to capacity, you need to delete old files in order to store new files. This is why in the last 5-10 years or so, you can remember pretty much what you've been up to. But if you go back to your childhood, you can only have spotty memories because you've had to delete those files in order to store these new files. Where an individual who's going to become a Buddha, they don't actually have that limited capacity. They have an unlimited capacity to be able to remember countless details about their current life and their previous lives too. And then they accumulate all that wisdom to be able to apply it in their last life to be able to get to enlightenment without the help of any teachers or any guides. An individual who's going to become a Buddha and who was actually a Buddha, once they get to that enlightened mental state, they can quickly determine the condition of a person's mind, and then they're able to help them with teachings that is actually going to be able to help them get to enlightenment. So they don't go around and give people unsolicited guidance, but for their students and the people that are learning with them, they can observe the qualities of that person's mind and then share the teachings with them to help them. This is one of the ways that they're so effective, is that they can observe the qualities of another person's mind. And then lastly, an individual who's a Buddha, they're going to be a living, breathing, walking example of their teachings. Whatever they teach, that's what they're actually practicing as well. So it's not like they teach one thing and then they do something completely opposite. Because an individual who's a Buddha, they understand that their students are learning just as much through their spoken words as they are through their actions, so that their actions and the way that they function in their day-to-day decision-making is exactly the same way as what they're teaching. They teach whatever they teach, and then they're going to be practicing those same exact things because their students are learning from that. So they're a living, breathing, walking example of their teachings. So these are the criteria of what makes a Buddha, and this type of individual is very rare in the world. The last one that the world is currently aware of existed over 2,500 years ago. So you'll hear some people that will tell you that everybody is a Buddha, but the Buddha never actually said that, right? So we refer to this type of individual as a fully, perfectly enlightened one. And the reason why is because if you learn from a teacher how to get to enlightenment, and that teacher wasn't a Buddha, you're going to be learning what it takes for you to get to enlightenment, but there's going to be some extra things that you're learning that didn't actually lead to your enlightenment. So you're going to have kind of like some extra baggage around, maybe 10, 15, 20% of the things that you're doing. They didn't lead to your enlightenment, but you're still doing those out of respect for your teacher. The way an individual that is a Buddha, if they're, say, practicing a meditation and it works and it's improving the condition of their mind, they know that this is what leads to enlightenment, and they know that's the path to enlightenment. But if they try a meditation and it's not working to improve the condition of their mind, they will discard it and they will just move it to the side. They won't continue to do that. So an individual who gets to enlightenment as a Buddha, as a criteria I just mentioned, we call them fully, perfectly enlightened, because by the time they get to enlightenment, what they know is the path to enlightenment. Right? They know other things, of course, about the world, but in terms of the path to enlightenment, they know exactly how to get to enlightenment. And they spend the rest of their life illuminating that path and making it very clear for other people of how to actually get to that enlightened mental state. So that's why we refer to them as fully, perfectly enlightened, because they understand the path inside and out, backwards and forwards. They figured it out on their own. So this is what makes a Buddha a Buddha. And they're very rare in the world. Like I mentioned, the last time that the world is aware of any Buddha in existence was 2,500 years ago. In this individual that we refer to as the Buddha or Gotama Buddha, but there's other ways to refer to him as well. In terms of what the teachings of the Buddha are, is the teachings of the Buddha are a path to attaining enlightenment in this life through purification of the mind. The Buddha figured out that there's these individual pollutions that are in the mind, and when you use the tools and techniques that he figured out and you uproot those out of the mind, that's where the mind is being purified of these pollutions. And now when the mind's purified, the mind's going to experience these enhanced qualities that is going to be experienced gradually as you're getting closer and closer to enlightenment. Enlightenment isn't instantaneous. It's gradual training, gradual practice, and gradual progress. You're gradually training your mind to get to this enlightened mental state through purifying your mind. And as these pollutions are gradually diminishing and you're gradually increasing the wholesome qualities of your mind, you're going to start noticing these qualities that are occurring. Enlightenment is attainable as a mental state during this life or at death. And this is where the mind's going to be completely peaceful, calm, serene, and content with joy. It's a permanent mental state that by the time you get to enlightenment, it's physically impossible for that individual to experience any of these discontent feelings. Sadness, anger, frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety, loneliness, boredom, shyness, resentment, jealousy, all these feelings and others are no longer experienced by an enlightened being because the causes and conditions that are producing them have been eliminated from the mind, those pollutions. Oftentimes people think that these feelings are caused by something external, but you guys are going to be able to see today with the very first teaching of the Buddha in a way that you can independently verify that it's your own mind that's causing these feelings. It's nothing external that's actually causing these feelings. So I'm going to walk you through that first teaching so you can independently verify what's causing these feelings. Because how could you ever eliminate them if you didn't understand what was causing them? So by the time any person has purified their mind, they're no longer experiencing these discontent feelings any longer. You'll notice that the mind has a high degree of focus, concentration, clarity, and deep memory because the mind's performing optimally at this point. Because with those pollutions in the mind, it can't perform optimally. But when those are uprooted and eliminated out of the mind, that's where these enhanced qualities will be experienced, that focus, concentration, clarity, and deep memory. You'll notice that you'll have deep wisdom about the world and what's going on around you, and you'll be able to be polite, kind, friendly, and respectful to everybody. Right now, that might be a bit of a challenge. There's probably certain people that you're polite, kind, friendly, and respectful to, and then there's probably certain people that you're impolite, unkind, unfriendly, and disrespectful to. But that's actually coming from your own mind. You can transform that. You can get to the point where you're not doing that any longer, and then your relationships can really blossom. That by the time you get to enlightenment, you don't have this bitterness and harshness and hostility in your mind anymore, that your personal and professional relationships are at ease. Because as long as you're being bitter and harsh and hostile to people, this is all just going to come back to you. But if you can purify your mind and you can uproot these causes and conditions that are producing it, where you're polite, kind, friendly, respectful to everybody, over time, more and more, that's what's going to be coming back to you. And your relationships will all be harmonious by the time you get to enlightenment. You don't have disgruntledness, resentment, bitterness, and hostility in your mind any longer. And because you're not putting that out, that's not coming back to you either. The way that this is occurring is through eliminating what's called craving, anger, and ignorance. This is a way to refer to these pollutions that the Buddha discovered at a high level. The deepest level detail that the Buddha describes about these pollutions, it's called the 10 fetters. What a fetter is during the lifetime of the Buddha, if you were a criminal, they would put a shackle and a chain and a ball around your ankle, and then they would leave you out in a field, and everybody would be confined to that area. Where today we put prisoners in jail cells or prison cells. So when the Buddha discovers these 10 pollutions in the mind, he refers to them as fetters, because it's keeping the mind trapped or confined in this unenlightened state, where you're experiencing anger and sadness and frustration over and over and over again. So what he's teaching you how to do is release your mind from these fetters. And just like a prisoner, if you release that shackle off their ankle, it's like, wow, I'm free. I can move about the world. Everything's wonderful. That's the way it is with the enlightened mental state, is that your mind's free because you don't have these pollutions. Your mind's not bound up any longer. But when we talk about them from a high level, we refer to them as craving, anger, and ignorance. So I'll explain to you guys what these are just briefly. And then if you guys decide to continue to learn, you'll actually learn more detail about these pollutions of the mind. So what craving is where the mind is longing, yearning. It's chasing after the objects of its affection, wanting things to be a certain way. It's almost like an unquenchable thirst that the mind chases and chases and chases. It's like the next new shiny object waiting around the corner is going to provide some kind of lasting satisfaction. So the mind's seeking satisfaction outside of yourself. And the mind thinks, if I can just get that thing, everything will be perfect in my life. And if you chase and chase and chase and chase and chase and you get what you want, you'll be happy or excited. You'll get pleasant feelings. But if you don't get what you want, you'll get painful feelings like anger, sadness, frustration, and others, right? So this cravings, this longing, yearning, this chasing after things, this selfish desires, pulling in the direction of the objects of your affection, that's what's causing the anger. And now when the anger is arising, the mind becomes unskillful. That bitterness, that harshness and hostility is arising. And what you'll tend to do is you'll tend to push people away. You might have pushed away friends or family members out of your life, thinking that that was going to solve the problem. But you can see that that didn't solve the problem because you still get angry. You still get frustrated. If they were the true cause of your problem, when you push them away, you would be peaceful for the rest of your life. This is called aversion, where you're pushing a person or you're pushing a situation away, thinking that that's going to solve your anger and frustration. Or the second thing you'll do with this unskillful aspect of the mind is you might be bitter and harsh and hostile to people through your intentions, your speech, and your actions. It's almost like an animal growling and roaring at another animal, trying to convince it and scare it and fear it into doing things your way. It's like, do things my way. The mind's trying to get its cravings fulfilled because the mind thinks if I can just get things my way, everything will be perfect. So sometimes the mind is bitter and harsh and hostile towards people, trying to fear them into doing things your way. Or the third thing you might do is put your expectations on people and try to control them or pressure them or force them to do things your way. And again, this is the mind trying to get its cravings fulfilled. So it's these cravings that is producing the anger. And when the anger is arising, it's pushing away, being bitter, harsh, and hostile, or putting expectations on people. And in this scenario, you can't live with all beings harmoniously because it's only a matter of time before someone does something different than what you want, because you live in an impermanent world where things are constantly changing and not everybody's going to do things your way. And where all of this is coming from, the craving and anger, it's coming from what's referred to as ignorance. I tend to not use that word because it's a derogatory word, and the people are translating what the Buddha said into English, and this isn't the best word to use because a Buddha, an enlightened being, doesn't refer to people in a derogatory and degrading way. But I use this because other teachers use it and it'll help you to understand what they're teaching. But the better way to think about this is the unknowing of true reality. Confusion, misunderstanding, a lack of wisdom, misperceptions, that the mind in the unenlightened state just doesn't understand what it doesn't understand. The mind in the unenlightened state firmly believes that other people are causing you to be angry. But when you look at this closely, you can see that it's your cravings, it's your longing, your yearning. The mind's wanting things a certain way. And if you get that, you feel happy and excited, you get pleasant feelings. But if you don't get things your way, you get the painful feelings. And you're going to see this in more detail when we get to the Four Noble Truths. So while we call this craving, anger, and ignorance, it's really because of ignorance that the mind craves and has anger. That if it wasn't for this ignorance, this lack of wisdom, this unknowing of true reality, the mind would have eliminated its craving and anger. But because the mind's lack of wisdom, it still craves and it still has this anger. So everything on the path to enlightenment is about cultivation of wisdom. There's no beliefs in the teachings of the Buddha. You're not believing a bunch of things and then hoping something good happens when you die. You're actually learning, growing, and developing now in this life to be able to move your mind to this peaceful and joyful mental state. So while we call it craving, anger, and ignorance, it's really because of ignorance that craving and anger continues to exist in the mind. And through arising wisdom, you can eliminate your craving and anger. And now this is where the mind is experiencing enlightenment. So that's where the purification of craving, anger, and ignorance, getting that out of the mind, is what produces enlightenment. And you're gradually bringing that down, and then you're gradually increasing the wholesome qualities in your mind, and you'll see this gradual transformation in your mind and your life. Because you know in situations where you were once angry and frustrated and agitated or annoyed, and when you're in those same situations and your mind is completely peaceful and joyful, you'll know it's these teachings that are leading to that. That transformation is occurring through training of your mind. So there's an entire path that the Buddha teaches of how to purify the mind. And that's what his teachings are, is this path to purifying the mind, which you learn as you gradually journey on the path to enlightenment. What the Buddha is helping you in terms of cultivation of wisdom and getting rid of that ignorance, the main thing that he's helping you to cultivate wisdom about is this natural law of Gama, or the natural laws of existence. This natural law of Gama, some people call it karma. You might have heard that. That's a different language. That's a Sanskrit language. The original teachings of the Buddha are in the Pali language. So people who study the original teachings of the Buddha use the word Gama, right? But it's essentially pointing to the exact same thing. This natural law of Gama, it isn't anything mystical or magical. It's cause and effect, or action and result. It's a natural law that's affecting you whether you're aware of it or not. It's not anything about punishments and rewards. It's not about who's to blame or who's at fault. It's not a black cloud following you around or anything like that. It's just that when you make decisions, either wisely or unwisely, you're going to experience certain results. You're going to experience either wholesome Gama, wholesome results, or you're going to experience unwholesome Gama, or unwholesome results. And when you lack wisdom, which every unenlightened mind does, you're going to tend to make unwise decisions, and it's going to produce unwholesome results for you, or unwholesome Gama. And when you experience that unwholesome Gama, what the unenlightened mind tends to do is blame other people. Right? Because it can't be you that's causing this thing. It's got to be somebody else, right? That's the ego in the mind, thinking that everything I'm doing is wonderful and somebody else is at blame here. Someone else is at fault, right? So it's not about blame or fault or anything like that. It's about seeing true reality, to be able to see what are the decisions that one is making that's leading to any particular result. It's kind of like if you were walking down the beach and you were kicking up sand and the wind kept blowing the sand back in your face. You're like, something's going on here. What's happening? Oh, I'm kicking up the sand. Let me stop doing that because I really don't like the sand blowing back in my face. So I'm just going to stop kicking up sand. Right? So it's the same kind of thing, is that when you're experiencing unwholesome results coming back to you, if you can understand what decisions you're making that's leading to that, now you can just make different decisions and experience different results. But if it's everybody else that's causing what you experience, then you never cultivate the wisdom, you never make different decisions, and you never experience different results. So the Buddha is guiding you to be able to awaken or cultivate wisdom of this natural law, to be able to see true reality. We did the same thing when we were kids. We didn't understand the natural law of gravity, and we struggled with this natural law. We fell down, we hit our head, we bumped our elbows, we broke our toys, we cried and cried and cried because we lived in a world that we didn't understand. And then slowly but surely, we gained wisdom of this natural law. And we started tying our shoes a bit tighter. We started looking at the surface of the sidewalk. We stopped being so giddy and bouncing around all the time. And now we're at a point where we understand this natural law of gravity so well, we can climb ladders, we can ride bicycles, we can get on airplanes and fly all over the world, because we might say we're fully awake to this natural law. We fully cultivated wisdom of this natural law. But when we lacked wisdom of that natural law, we made unwise decisions and we struggled because we were living in a world that we didn't understand. Well, there's other natural laws that are affecting you, whether you're aware of it or not, just like the natural law of gravity. And when you don't have wisdom of that natural law, you'll go around the world and make unwise decisions and you're going to experience unwholesome results. But when you awaken to this natural law, now you can go out into the world with wisdom, and now you can navigate the world peacefully and joyfully. That anger, the sadness, the stress, the anxiety, the fear, the guilt, the shame, this is all an indication to you that your mind is not yet fully awake. That by the time you get to enlightenment, you won't be experiencing that anymore. That's an indication to you that you're living in a world that you don't understand and the mind's struggling and having difficulties. So what the Buddha is teaching you to do is learn his teachings intellectually, investigate and examine them. Then he's teaching you to reflect on those teachings, to independently verify whether they're true or they're false. And then you practice his teachings, integrating them into your day-to-day life to be able to train your mind. This is what leads to wisdom. With belief, you don't know what's true or false. You're just believing it because somebody either convinced you to believe it or you convinced yourself to believe it. But what the Buddha's guiding you to is wisdom, because that's what's going to fix the ignorance. Right? Because if ignorance is leading to craving and anger, well, the way to fix that is get to wisdom. If you can get to wisdom, then you can eliminate your craving and your anger. So he's not teaching you to believe anything. He never said, just believe me, just believe me. He said just the opposite. He said, come, examine my teachings, investigate them. Because he knew if you investigated and examined them close enough that you would see that your mind is improving as you're practicing. You'd be able to independently verify the truth for yourself. So the Buddha didn't explain how the world should be. That if everybody follows these rules and commandments, this is the way the world should be, and now everybody go follow these rules and commandments. He didn't do that. He said, this is the way the world is. And by understanding the way the world is, that's where you have the wisdom to understand this world that you live in. And now you can navigate the world peacefully. You know, how many times have you maybe watched the news, or maybe you heard about something that a friend or family member did, and you were just like, I don't understand why they keep doing that. I just don't understand, right? That's your mind lacking wisdom, right? So the Buddha didn't teach you the way the world should be. He's teaching you the way the world is. So now you understand the way the world is, and you can navigate it with this wisdom, with peace and joy. So training the mind to experience this peace and joy is through acquiring wisdom of these natural laws of existence. And that's what's going to gradually help you cultivate the wisdom of how to remove these pollutions out of the mind. What the teachings of the Buddha are is that they're teachings that are timeless. The Buddhist teachings are just as applicable today as they were 2,500 years ago, because what he did is he described these natural laws, and these natural laws haven't changed from 2,500 years ago until now. So the Buddha speaks very clear, very concise, and very precise. But depending on where you're learning, the translations and the teachings and the teacher's knowledge of those teachings can be different from place to place to place. So it's important that you get back to what are the original teachings of the Buddha using his original words. Because you'll see if you study with his original words, he spoke very clear, very concise, and very precise. That you don't have to interpret his words. You don't have to figure out what he's saying. He just says it very clearly and very precisely. And you'll see that it's timeless because he's describing these natural laws. The Buddha did teach about the cycle of rebirth, and he taught about the 5 realms of existence. So these are things that he taught for a reason. This isn't something that you normally approach right at the beginning of learning, but I just let you know that what his teachings are is he did share these things because this is actually the truth, and this is what's actually happening. And he taught these things for a reason, because as you're getting rid of these pollutions out of the mind, if you started having memories of your past lives and you didn't understand that that's what that was, it could really shake you up. So let's just say that as you're getting rid of these pollutions, learning all these other teachings of the Buddha, you start having these vivid memories of being murdered. and they just keep reoccurring in your mind over and over and over again. This could really shake you up and really bother you. But if you understood that that was your past life memories and you can just set it aside and no need to think about it, that can be helping you to stabilize your mind, right? So understanding the cycle of rebirth is part of the path to enlightenment, but it's not something that you normally learn right up front. The same thing with the 5 realms of existence, that he taught the hell realm, the animal realm, the afflicted spirits, which are like ghosts. Then he taught the human realm and the heavenly realm. These beings are all in the same time and space as us. They're not in some far distant land somewhere. They're all in the same time and space. But he taught these for a reason. Because as you're training your mind and you're getting rid of these pollutions out of your mind, you might actually see some of these beings. Some people can actually see these beings, like hell beings or afflicted spirits or heavenly beings. Even though they're formless, some people can actually see them. Or you might start having communication. You can actually hear things from these beings, that beings in the hell realm, afflicted spirits, and heavenly realm. Sometimes human beings can actually hear them. And somebody might think that they're actually going crazy if they were hearing these individuals speaking. But just like you're at a restaurant and 2 tables over, someone could be talking really loud and you could ignore that and continue to have your conversation. You can do the same thing with this. You can learn how to ignore those beings that are trying to communicate with you. So the Buddha taught these things for a reason, because this is true reality, and you need to understand that you might start having these kinds of experiences, but it's not usually something that you learn right up front. And these are also things that you can independently verify. All of the teachings of the Buddha are independently verifiable. Right now, you might be believing you only have one life because you haven't maybe had memories of your past lives. But as you start having these things occurring, then you'll start being able to independently verify that this is true. So there's teachings to be able to help you independently verify all of these things. And it's in volume 11 of our book series. I have a 13-book series, and it's in volume 11. But it's in volume 11 for a reason, because that's about the time when it's wise for you to start looking at that stuff. Up front, there's core central teachings for you to be able to learn, start training your mind and helping you get rid of these pollutions. So it's usually about 1.5 years, 2 years, 3 years into someone's development that they start looking at these kinds of things. But just know that you'll see those kinds of things in the teachings of the Buddha for a reason, because you're going to need those at some point in your journey. Then sometimes people think that the Buddha did not teach about God. Some people even go as far as to say that the Buddha rejected God, or he denied the existence of God. This is not true. This is for somebody who's misunderstanding the teachings, that have never actually penetrated into his teachings deeply. Because if you look at his original words, he did teach about this being. But he doesn't make this being the center, focal point of his teachings, because it's not God who determines whether or not you get to enlightenment or not. So he didn't put God at the center of his teachings. He put you at the center of his teachings, because it's you that needs to learn and grow and develop in order to be able to train your mind. So he does talk about this being, and he helps people to understand about this being, but he never really focuses on this being as the focal point of his teachings. He never teaches to worship or praise this being, or even to fear this being. He never taught that this being is punishing you or rewarding you. He never taught to pray to this being or anything like that, but he just explains this being and its existence. So whether you choose to understand that or not is up to you. It is part of what the Buddha taught, but you can actually get to enlightenment with a relationship with this being, or without a relationship with this being, because it's not this being that determines whether you get to enlightenment or not. And there's teachings to be able to help you to be able to figure that out, of how to either get to enlightenment without a relationship with this being or with a relationship with this being. But he did teach about this being. He's just not a focal point of his teachings. Then, in terms of the largest, most complete collection of the teachings of the Buddha, this isn't something that we refer to as the Pali Canon. The word Pali, this is actually referring to a certain language. It's a historical language that's no longer a spoken language today, that they documented the teachings of the Buddha in the Pali language. So the most largest complete collection of the teachings of the Buddha are in what we call the Pali Canon. This is 45 volumes of books that are this thick. The average person doesn't actually study with the original teachings of the Buddha. That's unwise, but that's truly what's actually happening, because these 45 volumes of books, at one time, it was very expensive to be able to get access to these, because here in Thailand, if you were to print this out and get a printed version of it, it would be about 3 months of your salary. And you probably don't own any book collections worth 3 months of your salary. So the average Thai person, the average temple, doesn't even have access to the original words of the Buddha. So the average person isn't typically studying with the original words of the Buddha. But one of the things that we've done with this book series is extracted out of those 45 volumes the most important teachings that you need in order to make your way to enlightenment. And this book series is titled The Path to Enlightenment, Revealing the Hidden. Right? It's the words of the Buddha, the path to enlightenment, revealing the hidden. Because these teachings have been inadvertently hidden for many, many, many centuries. They weren't intentionally hidden. It's just that the cost of reproducing them was so high, people couldn't afford it. So nowadays, with the internet, we can give it away for free. People can download it, right? Because there's no cost involved in that. Or you can take it and go print it yourself, a consolidated version, which is much less expensive. Or you can get a printed version here that is just reimbursing us for our printing cost. Or some people order it on Amazon, and you can get access to this full collection of teachings, which is going to guide you in the journey to enlightenment. So we've consolidated these 45 volumes into this book series. And then lastly, what the teachings of the Buddha are, is it's to heal from what hurt you so that you never need to hurt ever again. That's what the teachings of the Buddha are for. It's to do this inner work, this inner growth, this inner development. We might even call this a self-help program, right? That's, if the Buddha was alive today, we'd probably call him a life coach, right? Or a teacher. Right? That's what the Buddha did. He was a life teacher, helping you to learn how to improve your life. It's not a religion. It's not rules and commandments and things like this. It's about helping you do this inner work, this growth and development as a human being, becoming a better and better human being. And it's to heal from what hurt you so that you never need to hurt ever again. But what's hurting you isn't the outside world. What's hurting you is inside one's own mind. And when you purify the mind and get that out of the mind, that's where the peace and joy comes in more and more and more. So I'm going to pause here and see if you guys have any questions on what the teachings of the Buddha are. And then after, if you guys have any questions, I'm going to share with you what the teachings of the Buddha are not, so that you'll understand that, because that'll actually help you to understand what the teachings of the Buddha are. So do you guys have any questions on what the teachings of the Buddha are? Do you have a question? No? Okay, just scratching your face? Okay, I saw your hand like this. Okay, let me see if we have anything online. Okay. Okay, it looks like Chris has a question. Let me just take this off. Okay, Chris is asking here, he says, is an enlightened being who is not a Buddha a living, breathing, walking example of the Buddha's teachings? Yes. So going back to that slide, Chris, about what a Buddha is going to have these first three criteria. They're going to have those. And this fourth one too, of having that profound, deep memory to remember countless details about their current life and their past lives too. That's what a Buddha is going to have. A Buddha is going to have all of these, but an enlightened being is actually going to also have, they're not going to have these four, but they're going to be able to determine the condition of someone's mind, and they're going to be a living, breathing, walking example of the teaching. So an average enlightened being will have these two qualities, but a Buddha is going to have all six of these. Okay. All right, let me see what else we have here. Okay, I don't see any other questions anywhere. All right, so let's move deeper into this so that now we can talk about what the teachings of the Buddha are not, because this is a way to help you to understand what the teachings of the Buddha are, is talk about what they are not. The teachings of the Buddha are not a collection of beliefs, doctrine, concepts, opinions, and views that will produce some kind of pleasant afterlife if you believe in them, and an unpleasant afterlife if you don't believe in them. The teachings of the Buddha have no belief in them whatsoever. It's about getting to wisdom. That's what he's guiding you to be able to do. And he's not sharing opinions and views with you. He's sharing with you actual truth that you can independently verify. It's not about whether you agree or disagree with the teachings of the Buddha, because an unenlightened being is going to disagree with some of the things that the Buddha is teaching, because the mind's lacking the wisdom. The mind's stuck in this unenlightened state. It has this lack of wisdom. So by you understanding what a Buddha is actually teaching, and then you reflect on it and you practice it, you can see the truth for yourself. So individuals will sometimes have disagreements with what the Buddha is teaching, but if you step back from that and now look at it objectively and try to then independently verify what's being taught, then you can cultivate the wisdom and you can come up to the level of what the Buddha is actually teaching you. And that's what's helping you to awaken your mind. So you won't get to enlightenment by saying, oh, I disagree with that, or I agree with this and I disagree with that. When you're disagreeing with something that the Buddha is teaching, that's because your mind doesn't have that wisdom yet. You're not looking at it through that same perspective. So that's where you ask questions to be able to independently verify and bring your wisdom up to be able to then see it for yourself truly. So the Buddha is not teaching you beliefs, opinions, or views, or concepts, or doctrine. He's teaching you these natural laws that you can then awaken to if you spend the time to cultivate the wisdom about that. In my opinion, the teachings of the Buddha are not a religion. Sometimes people refer to Buddhism as a religion. Whether you refer to it that way or not is up to you, but it really comes down to what you think about as a religion. If you think about religion as one person at the top telling everybody else what they should or shouldn't be doing, or if you think about religion as rites, rituals, ceremonies, worship, and prayer, or if you think about a religion as rules and commandments that everyone must follow in order to produce a peaceful world, the Buddhist teachings are not any of these things. There's not one person at the top of Buddhism telling everybody else what they should or shouldn't be doing. In fact, you are your own practitioner. You are your own independent journey to enlightenment. A teacher, we're like a tour guide. We're pointing out for you the things that you need to learn and understand, but it's you that's doing the work to learn, grow, and develop on this path. There's not one person at the top telling you what you should or shouldn't be doing. It's you cultivating wisdom about these natural laws, having a teacher point out things for you and provide you the resources that you need to be able to do that work. So a teacher is going to have books and videos and podcasts and audiobooks. These are the things that we have available to us now to be able to help you to learn those teachings. And a teacher is going to be able to give those things to you and help you to be able to cultivate your wisdom about these natural laws. So it's you that's doing the work. There's nobody at the top. And there's not any rites, rituals, ceremonies, worship, or prayer. Because remember, the ultimate goal of the teachings of the Buddha is to get to wisdom. There's no amount of wisdom that rites, rituals, ceremonies, worship, or prayer is going to help you to be able to do. So there's no amount of water that I can sprinkle on you that's going to give you wisdom. There's no amount of strings that I can tie on your wrist that's going to help you cultivate wisdom. So even though you might see some of these things within a Buddhist environment, or what people are referring to as a Buddhist environment, that's not what the Buddha actually taught. So there's plenty of misunderstandings in the world related to his teachings. And that's why it's so important that you study his original teachings so that you can see what did he teach and what he didn't teach. And you'll see very clearly, he tells you that there's nothing superstitious or auspicious about his teachings. And he says very clearly that there's no rites, rituals, ceremonies, or worship or prayer in his teachings, because he's helping you to cultivate wisdom. But because very few people in the world study his original teachings, you're going to see lots of people out there doing rites, rituals, ceremonies, worship, and prayer. But that's not what the Buddha actually taught. So there's a difference between what the Buddha taught and then what some people actually choose to do. But by you getting closer and closer to what the Buddha taught, then you can train your mind and experience this enlightened mental state. So the Buddha's teachings don't contain rites, rituals, ceremonies, worship, and prayer. And he's not giving you rules and commandments. There's no rules in his teachings. He's just helping you to understand your mind and understand how to uproot these pollutions out of the mind. One way to think about the teachings of the Buddha is he basically took human psychology and he boiled it down to common language that the average person can understand. And now you're using that in order to be able to train your mind. So there's no rules or commandments in his teachings. And it's not about going out into the world and convincing other people to do these things. So religion, depending on how you look at it, in my opinion, the teachings of the Buddha aren't a religion. He never said he discovered a new religion. He said, I discovered a better way of life. right? And this is that better way of life that he taught, and he's guiding you to understand what he did to get to that enlightened mental state. And he's not trying to convince you or force you to do that. He's just saying, hey, if you would like to understand how to get to this peace and joy, here's how I did it. And now if you'd like to learn it, great. And if you're not interested in learning it, okay, that's fine. That's up to you. Right? What the teachings of the Buddha are not is it's not about a system of punishments and rewards. Sometimes, depending on what you've been exposed to in life, you might be thinking of things like this as punishments and rewards. The Buddha didn't teach that way. There's not punishment and rewards in his teachings. There's also nothing mystical or magical or superstitious or auspicious in his teachings. You can see it in his own words. He says that very clearly. Then also, his teachings are not something to attempt to force others or convince others to do. This isn't about going out into the world and convincing other people to do things. This is about you doing the work. It's for you, right? As you become more and more peaceful, your friends and family are going to be like, what are you doing? Like, I know you've been doing something because you used to not be this joyful and this peaceful. What are you doing? You know, they're going to be able to see that you're not hateful anymore, that you're not angry anymore, you're not frustrated anymore. And they're going to start asking you questions. And that's when you share it with them. But you don't have to go out into the world and convince people to do anything at all. You just do the work yourself, and that's it. Right? Also, the teachings of the Buddha aren't these short, catchy phrases that you might see if you've been kind of like on the internet. If you've been in social media, you might see these little short, catchy phrases, and then people put the Buddha, right? And if you do the research on those short, little, catchy phrases, about 99.9% of them were never said by the Buddha. They're usually said by somebody in the last 100 years or so. The Buddhist teachings are very deep, very profound, very deep discourses. He doesn't have these little short, catchy phrases like that. So if you see these little short, catchy phrases attributed to the Buddha, you can be pretty sure that they're not the teachings of the Buddha. Then lastly, what the teachings of the Buddha are not is they're not teachings that are stuck in a cultural past that degrades and judges any particular group of people. Sometimes you might think that because he taught so long ago, surely he degraded somebody and denigrated. Maybe he hated women, or maybe he looked down on women or minorities or something like that. You won't see that anywhere in his teachings. He never degrades or denigrates anybody. And his teachings aren't based on culture. It's based on these natural laws, which cuts through culture. So you will see in the teachings of the Buddha where he's teaching men how to respect their female wives, and he's teaching females how to respect their male husbands. But he also teaches about same-gender relationships too. That oftentimes people think that, oh, it's so horrible if you have a same-gender relationship. No, there's no harm in loving somebody. If they're opposite gender or they're the same gender, there's no harm in having love and kindness and respect for people. So you won't see the Buddha denigrating or degrading any particular group of people that sometimes you might see today. People have hatred or anger towards a certain group of people. The Buddha is teaching you how to love and have kindness and respect and politeness towards all beings. So he doesn't denigrate or degrade any particular group of people. Okay, so this is what the teachings of the Buddha are not. Any questions on this? No questions? Let me see if we have anything online. I don't see any questions online. Okay, so this is where I usually take a little bit of a break. If you guys would like to have a little bit of a break, we've been chatting for about an hour and a half with our meditation and all that kind of stuff. So we can take like a 20-minute break, which will take us up to, my calculation would be 2:40. That'll give us a good 20-minute break to chat with each other, use the restroom. By the way, I think the water is turned off to this building because they're having issues with the water. You guys are welcome to use the toilets, but they may not flush, but it's okay, but just understand that. We have snacks here. We have water that is provided by our students. There's even a 7-Eleven if you go outside and you turn right. There's a 7-Eleven at the end of the street. So enjoy your break for about 20 minutes, and then when we come back, I'm going to teach you the Four Noble Truths. This is the very first teaching of the Buddha. where you can learn about the problem in the mind, the cause of the problem, the elimination of it, and the path forward. This is where you can have a real breakthrough to being able to independently verify why you experience anger, sadness, frustration, and all these other discontent feelings. So enjoy your break, and we'll maybe see you guys in about 20 minutes. Okay? I thought I would just come back online for the student in YouTube who's asking about where the Buddha talked about God. If you look in our book series in volume 11, you're going to see countless references to God, where the Buddha talks about this great Brahma. This is the way that they refer to God. So if you go to our website, buddhadailywisdom.com, and you click on free books, and then you'll see volume 11. These are the original words of the Buddha, where you'll be able to see countless references to God, where he talks about this being of God, and he explains this being. In fact, during the lifetime of the Buddha, they thought of multiple gods. So he talked about multiple gods, but typically when he was talking about God, he was talking about this great Brahma, and you'll see it in the original words of the Buddha, because I put in parentheses, I put God. So if you go to the volume 11 and you just did a search through the PDF document for God, you're going to see countless references to this being. Okay, so welcome back to you guys. We're going to keep on going here in our course. I'm going to share this teaching with you. It'll only take me about 45 minutes to share it with you. This is the very first teaching of the Buddha, and you guys can ask questions when we go through here too. I'm going to be pausing it a few times and opening up to questions that you guys might have. I'm going to share with you the Four Noble Truths. This is the very first teaching of the Buddha in 4 simple statements. You're going to be able to potentially have a breakthrough today where you can actually see what's causing these feelings. You can independently verify it. The way that you learn the teachings of the Buddha is what the Buddha taught you to do is listen with eager ears, right? So that you're actively learning, because it's you, the one who is responsible for your own learning and growth and development. So by you not believing any of these teachings and you investigating what I'm sharing, don't believe what I'm sharing, you can learn what I'm sharing intellectually. You can reflect on it to independently verify whether it's true or false based on your current experiences in life. And then you can start practicing what it is that I'm sharing with you. And that's where the real transformation is occurring. So I'm going to show you how to do this learning, this reflection, and this practice with this very first teaching so you understand how to do that. So I'm going to help you to understand the Four Noble Truths. The Four Noble Truths is part of what's called the Eightfold Path. The Eightfold Path is the core central teaching of the Buddha. These are 8 individual factors that are laying out the training for you of how to actually train the mind. The Four Noble Truths is part of what we call right view. This is the very first factor of the Eightfold Path. So I'm going to explain to you guys what the Four Noble Truths are, and then we'll circle back and I'll help you to understand a little bit more about the Eightfold Path. So in order to understand the Four Noble Truths, you need to first understand the 3 universal truths. The reason why they're called truths is because the Buddha knew that they were true. I know that they're true. Other people know that they're true, but you need to know that they're true. And that's why you don't believe what I'm sharing with you. So I'm going to walk you through this intellectual learning, examination, investigation, reflection, and practice, starting with this first one. Remember, the Buddha is teaching you the way the world is, not the way the world should be, but the way the world is. And what he's teaching you in this first universal truth is that the way the world is that it's impermanent. It's constantly changing, right? You need to be able to independently verify this for yourself, that things are not permanent, that they're constantly changing. These are what's called conditioned objects. Conditioned object will arise, it will change, and then it will fade away. Right? This is called a conditioned object. Anything that you can see, hear, smell, taste, anything that comes in contact with the body, or any thoughts or ideas that go through the mind, these are all impermanent. They're conditioned objects. They arise, they change, and they fade away. They are impermanent. They're temporary, right? But then there's something called unconditioned objects. An unconditioned object does not arise, it doesn't change, it doesn't fade away. It's permanent, right? The things that are permanent are enlightenment. Once you get to enlightenment, your mind is now unconditioned because you've purified your mind. So the enlightened mental state, it's a permanent mental state. And the natural laws themselves, they are unconditioned. They don't arise, they don't change, and they don't fade away. That's why the teachings of the Buddha are timeless, because he's teaching you about these natural laws. So there's conditioned objects which arise, change, and fade away. They're constantly changing, they're temporary, and that's the vast majority of everything in the world. But then there's these unconditioned objects, which don't arise, don't change, and don't fade away. And the only 2 there is enlightenment and the natural laws of existence. These are the only 2. Okay? So now you don't believe this, right? Because I just shared with you something intellectually. You don't believe it. Now you move it into reflection to try to independently verify whether what I said is true or false. Because you're in this world, and I'm describing this world to you as being impermanent, and now you can independently verify this through reflection. So you look around the world to try to determine if what I'm sharing is true. And the way that you do that is you try to find something that's permanent, right? You kind of look around the world and see, is there anything that you can see, hear, smell, taste, anything that comes in contact with the body, or any thoughts or ideas that go through the mind that are permanent? So here's how I suggest you do this. Start with something that you're familiar with, like this human body. You're very familiar with that. Is this body permanent, meaning it's always the same and it's never changed? Or is it impermanent, meaning it's constantly changing? So what would you say? Is this body permanent or impermanent? It's impermanent, right? Ever since conception, when the egg and the sperm came together, this body's been constantly changing. We get taller, we get shorter, we get fatter, we get smaller, we get pimples and moles, we get gray hair. Some of us start losing our hair. Our teeth grow in, then they fall out, then they grow in again, right? This is all change, right? So this is the human body is impermanent. We can see that to be true ourselves. But then we don't stop there. We keep going, right? Think about your relationships. If your relationships are permanent, then that means you had exactly the same people in your life, your entire life. If your relationships are impermanent, you've been having people come and go in and out of your life throughout your life. So what would you say? Are your relationships permanent or impermanent? They're impermanent, right? People have been coming and going in and out of your life your entire life. What about your bank account? Is your bank account permanent or impermanent? Impermanent, right? It goes up and down and up and down. Some people's goes up, up, up. Some people's go down, down, down. That's change, right? That's what our bank account is. It's constantly changing. What about the weather? Is the weather permanent or impermanent? It's impermanent, right? Constantly changing, right? So we could go on and on and on, right? Like if you walk down the street, you can see a crack in the sidewalk. That's impermanence. The sidewalk's not permanent. Some roads have sidewalks, some roads don't. Here in Thailand, some sidewalks go up and down. You know, as you're walking on the sidewalk, you're walking up and down the sidewalk like this, right? So you can look around the world and see this constant change. Like even here at the temple, the wood planks on the floor, some of them are longer, some of them are shorter, some of them are one color or another color, some of them are one texture or another. This is constant change. Right? So you need to be able to look around the world to be able to see it for yourself. When you see a fence and it's painted and then the paint is fading, that's impermanence, that's change. So this is a building block that's going to help you to understand the Four Noble Truths when we get to it. So you're going to need to commit this to your mind by going around and investigate. If you need 3 days, 3 weeks, 3 months to go around and be able to independently verify this, do that so that you can see in your own mind with 100% certainty that yes, the world around you is constantly changing. Okay. Then the second universal truth is called the universal truth of discontentedness. I'm going to explain to you guys what this is. This is where the Buddha is explaining to you what the unenlightened mind experiences. Some people refer to this as suffering. If you've studied the teachings of the Buddha in other places, you might have heard the word suffering being used. I don't use this word, and I'm going to explain to you why after I teach this to you. Okay. So in the original Pali Canon, the word that's being used is dukkha. And when the Buddha uses this word, he describes it as the unenlightened mind is experiencing conditioned feelings, that there's conditioned pleasant feelings, painful feelings, and neither painful nor pleasant feelings. What the pleasant feelings are things like happiness, excitement, elation, thrill, exhilaration, euphoria. The painful feelings are things like anger, sadness, frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety. Very painful for the mind to experience this. Then there's neither painful nor pleasant feelings. I put boredom and loneliness here, but some people say that's very painful for them. So you could put that in the painful category, right? But shyness is a good example. It's not painful. It's not pleasant. It's neither painful nor pleasant, right? The mind is uncomfortable. Or let's just say like somebody you didn't know came and sat really close to you on public transportation and your body was touching their body. You'd probably say, it's not painful. It's not pleasant. Maybe your mind is uncomfortable in that situation. It's dissatisfied. That's the third one, where it's not painful. It's not pleasant. Okay, so these are the three feelings that the unenlightened mind experiences. And these are what's called conditioned feelings, that based on some condition, your mind's now going to experience a feeling. Okay, so if it's sunny outside and you get happy because it's sunny outside, that's a conditioned feeling. That as long as it's sunny outside, you'll experience the feeling of happiness in the mind. But because it's a conditioned feeling, that's not permanent. It's not a permanent feeling. That's why you haven't been able to get to permanent happiness. Because if you base your happiness on the sun, well, then when it rains, you'll be sad or frustrated, right? Because that condition is no longer met. Or if you get happy when your bank account balance is up here, when it goes down here, you'll be sad or frustrated. Because it's a conditioned feeling that this condition has to be met. And then when that condition is met, then you will be happy. But if you don't get that, then your mind moves to some other feeling, like a painful feeling. So essentially what the Buddha is explaining to you is the unenlightened mind experiences these conditioned pleasant feelings, painful feelings, and neither painful nor pleasant. So like when an unenlightened being wakes up in the morning, they might see it's really sunny outside. They get so happy and excited. Wow, it's so sunny. Oh, I've been interested to go on this hike. I really want to go on this hike. I've been interested to go out in the woods with my friends and go on this hike. Oh, this is going to be so great. I can't wait to go. And now they go take a shower. And then they come out and it's raining. And now they're frustrated and angry and, oh man, I can't go hiking, right? Well, that's not what an enlightened being experiences. An enlightened being is beyond these conditioned feelings. An enlightened being is already happy when they wake up in the morning. They see it's sunny outside. It's like, sweet, I would like to go hiking today. I'm going to call my friends. We're going to go have a good time on this hiking trail. So now they go take a shower. And they come out and it's raining. It's like, oh, it's raining. Oh, well, I guess I'll stay home and read a book, or I'll go to the mall, or maybe I'll call my friends, see if they'd like to come over. I'll cook some food and maybe enjoy some food with them. You can maintain your happiness because your happiness wasn't based on the sun. So therefore, when the sun changes, you can still be happy, right? But as long as your mind is having conditioned feelings, you can't do that. So the unenlightened mind is essentially going up and down and up and down and up and down, right? It's only a matter of time before you become angry or irritated or annoyed about something, right? So this is what the Buddha is describing as the unenlightened mind, that it has conditioned feelings, pleasant, painful, neither painful nor pleasant. But now you don't believe that, right? That's the intellectual learning. Now you move it into reflection because you know your mind's unenlightened. So you ask yourself, is this what you experience? Do you experience pleasant feelings, painful feelings, and neither painful nor pleasant? Is there any feeling that you experience that doesn't fit into one of these three categories? And if there is, let me know when we get to the question period and we'll talk about it. Okay? So this is the Buddha helping you to understand what the unenlightened mind is experiencing. And you should be able to independently verify it if it's a universal truth. Right? Because it's independently verifiable, all of his teachings. Now, some people refer to this as suffering. If you've studied the teachings of the Buddha in other places, you might hear that word being used. I don't use that word because it describes the painful feelings really well. Right? The painful feelings when you're angry or sad or frustrated or having anxiety or stress or guilt or shame or fear, you might say you're suffering. But if your boss walked into your office and said, hey, I'm going to give you a raise today of $20,000 and you got really happy and excited, would you say you were suffering in that situation? Or if your mom called you up and says, hey, I heard you got a new house. I'm going to come visit you. I'd like to make some food for you and help you have some food. And you got really excited because your mom's coming. You probably wouldn't say you were suffering in that situation. Or that person who comes and sits next to you on public transportation and your body's touching their body, you probably wouldn't say you were suffering in that situation. So the word suffering describes the painful feelings really well, but it doesn't describe the pleasant feelings and the neither painful nor pleasant feelings. So in this situation, you would only be understanding 33% of what the Buddha is talking about on this important topic. That means you're missing 66% of his teachings. And if you're missing 66% of a teacher's teachings, how could you ever get to enlightenment? So I would encourage you to understand this as discontent, discontented, or discontentedness, where the mind's shaken up. It's unsteady, it's unstable. Have you ever been so excited you like tripped and fell? Or you dropped something and broke it, right? This is because the mind's discontent, right? It's shaken up, right? So you ultimately need to be able to see the conditioned pleasant feelings as just as much a part of the problem as the painful ones. Because if you allow your mind to get the conditioned pleasant feelings, the painful ones are waiting for you right around the corner, right? Because if I got so excited because I got a brand new job, or you got a brand new job and you got so excited about that job. Well, 5 years later, when the company goes out of business, you're going to be angry. You're going to be frustrated because that condition is no longer met, right? If you allow your mind to get conditional pleasant feelings, well, when that condition isn't met any longer, the mind's going to move to the painful ones. So you need to be able to see the conditioned pleasant feelings as just as much a part of the problem as the painful ones. So the word discontent, discontented, and discontentedness will help you to do that. An enlightened being is beyond all of this. They're experiencing unconditioned mental qualities, where the enlightened being is experiencing unconditioned happiness, unconditioned joy, where there doesn't need to be any condition met in order for there to be happiness in the mind. In the unenlightened state, it's kind of like if my mom does this, if my brothers and sisters do this, if my boss does this, if the weather's this, if I have this much money in my bank account, if I have this kind of house and this kind of car, then I'll be happy, right? So basically you're putting all these conditions in place, and the ability for you to be happy shrinks the more and more of those conditions that you have, right? Because you can't meet all of those criteria permanently. So your ability to be happy becomes smaller and smaller and smaller. This is why some people are old and grumpy. Not everybody, but some people become old and grumpy because they have all these expectations, all these cravings of things that they want to happen, all these expectations, all these conditions. So the Buddha is teaching you how to get beyond that, where you can have unconditional happiness. Instead of having conditional happiness, that you can only be happy in these rare situations, he's helping you to get to this unconditioned happiness where your mind can just always be happy. There doesn't need to be any condition met, right? So this here is helping you to be able to understand the problem. And you'll see that more clearly when we get to the Four Noble Truths, okay? So I use the word discontent, discontented, or discontentedness, because it more accurately describes the full spectrum of feelings and emotions that the unenlightened mind experiences. Then, I apologize, this projector, I should have moved it at break. It's a little bit cut off here. There's a third universal truth. It's called the universal truth of non-self. This is actually a solution to one of the problems that the Buddha discovered in the mind. So let me explain to you guys what that problem is first, and then I'll circle back and help you understand this one. So remember those 10 fetters. I haven't shown you guys what they are yet, but I at least explained to you guys what they are. Is these 10 pollutions that are in the mind. Out of these 10 pollutions, the very first pollution is called personal existence view. This is where the mind has this confusion or misunderstanding, this misperception, that it thinks that this body or this mind is you and who you are as a person. So the mind clings to a certain self-image or a certain self-identity, thinking that this is who you are. And you can only be happy when that's intact. And then when you're not getting what you want, you experience the painful feelings. So for example, if you ever went out in public and you spilled something on your clothing, and you were embarrassed, this is your personal existence view. The mind wants to be perceived by others in a certain way, and the mind is clinging to this self-image, thinking that this is who you are. And when your clothes are clean, hey, you feel great going out into the world because your mind's getting what it wants. But then when you spill spaghetti sauce or chocolate ice cream on your clothes, and now you're in a social situation, your mind's not getting what it wants. You're not being perceived the way you want to be perceived, and now you feel embarrassed, right? Or say that you look in the mirror and you see a wrinkle or a pimple or a mole, or you see some gray hair, right? Or you start losing your hair. You might be shaken up by that because that's the mind thinking that this body is you and it's clinging to it. And now when the mind sees that this body is changing because of impermanence, it doesn't like that. It wants to be perceived by others in a certain way. Or say you were ever in your house getting ready to go outside, and maybe you put on a set of clothes and you looked in the mirror and you're like, no, that's not how I want to look today. And then you put on some other clothes. You're like, no, that's not how I want to look today. And you put on some other clothes. You're like, all right, now that's how I want to look, right? Or maybe you stood in front of your closet thinking, who am I going to see today? And how do I want to look? Oh, there's that favorite shirt. I want that. Or those favorite pair of pants or skirt or whatever. The mind wants to be perceived by others in a certain way. Or if you were like me when I was a teenager, I used to get out the gel and the mousse, and I would run it through my hair, and I would try to get every little hair in exactly the right spot before I went to school. And I couldn't go outside until every single hair was in exactly the right spot. And I would do this for so long, sometimes I missed the school bus, right? This was my personal existence view. I didn't feel comfortable going outside until things were a certain way, right? And that's the mind thinking that this body is you and wanting to be perceived by others in a certain way. This is part of the personal existence view, clinging to this body, wanting it to be perceived by others in a certain way. But then there's a self-identity that the mind can cling to. This is based on your culture, your ethnicity, your sexual orientation, your nationality, your job or occupation or something like this. Like, I am American, or I am Argentinian, I am Chinese. I don't know where all of you guys are from. Germany, I am German, right? Any of this I am. It can be your culture, your ethnicity, your sexual orientation, nationality, job or occupation, or any number of things. And now you can only feel whole if things are the way you want them to be. So for example, someone might have in their mind, I am a boyfriend, or I am a girlfriend, or I am a husband, or I am a wife. And now when you're in a relationship, you feel pretty good. You feel pretty comfortable. But then when you guys break up, your mind doesn't identify with I am single. So now you might have felt like you wanted to hurry up and get right back into another relationship again. Or say you were in a restaurant and your mind was thinking, I am American, or I am Chinese, or I am German, or any of the other nationalities that your mind might be clinging to. Well, if you're at a table and 2 tables over, they're saying all Americans are lovely and kind and warm and gentle. I've never heard that before, but let's just say that they said that, right? You might be like, wow, they're talking about me. Wow, I feel really good, right? But now 2 tables over, they're saying something degrading and disparaging about where you consider who you are as a person. I am Argentinian, or I am Chinese. Are you from China? Yeah, I'm Chinese, or any of this other I am. Now when they're being degrading and disrespectful, you're going to be angry and frustrated. They're talking about me, right? So you can't get to permanent peace and permanent joy as long as your mind is clinging to an identity of who you think you are. Because you're going to hear things positively about that sometimes, and you're going to hear things negatively about that sometimes because of impermanence. Not everybody has the same opinion and views. So if you identify with these things as who you are, you will struggle and have difficulties. Say, for example, like I identify with I am a police officer. And now when I'm doing that job, I feel great. But let's just say 10, 15, 20 years into this job, I get injured and I can't do it anymore. Or say I retire, or I get fired, and now I'm driving a taxi, right? And now I'm frustrated and disgruntled because I am a police officer. That's what the mind has in its identity. But yet you're not doing that job. So now the individual struggles because their identity is not intact. Sometimes people get to the point where they don't even know who they are. They will go to their family. They will say, I don't even know who I am anymore. I need to go find myself. I need to go find my true self, right? Some people come to Thailand for that purpose, that explicit purpose. They need to go find themselves. Well, you're not going to find yourself in Thailand, because what the Buddha teaches you is that there is no self. Someone might find new hobbies, new activities, new job, new occupation, new friends, things like this. And they might go home and they're like, wow, I found myself. I know who I am again. Well, 5 years later, when all that stuff changes, you don't know who you are anymore. Because if you cling to any of this stuff, thinking that this is who you are, as soon as it changes, you're going to feel lost and confused again. So what the Buddha teaches you is that this body is not you, and this mind is not you. So if you cling to a self-image, or you cling to a self-identity, it's only a matter of time before all that changes, and now you're going to experience discontentedness. So you need to get to the point where you realize non-self, that you realize that there is a body and there is a mind, and they've come together for this existence, but this doesn't determine who you are as a person, right? There's a body, there's a mind, and the combination of these two things, we refer to it as a person or a human being. But that doesn't define who you are. This body, the way that this physical body looks, doesn't define who you are. And what's going on in your mind, that doesn't define who you are either, right? But the mind in the unenlightened state is going to keep trying to cling to this, thinking that this is who you are. So eventually the mind needs to get to the point where it stripped that away and it realizes non-self, and it no longer is clinging to a self-image or a self-identity, wanting to be perceived by others in a certain way. Okay, so this is a little bit about personal existence view and the universal truth of non-self. But remember, this is just the intellectual part. You're not believing any of this stuff. Right? You need to reflect on it to independently verify whether it's true or false. So what I'm sharing with you is that there is no self, that this body is not you and this mind is not you. So now I'll show you how to reflect on this to be able to independently verify it. So think about yourself when you were a child, teenager, early adulthood, and then now. Your personality, your character, who you thought you were as a person. Has it been exactly the same through all those 4 stages of your life, or has it been constantly changing? It's been constantly changing, right? So you can see there's no permanent self, right? Or here's another way. Say your arm was amputated and you only have one hand and one arm. Are you less of a person? She says no. Well, you guys say no? No, right? So there you can see intellectually that you understand this body is not you, because otherwise you would answer that question differently, right? Because if you had less body and this body is you, you would say, yeah, I'm less of a person because I have less body. But you don't answer the question that way. You say, no, I'm not less of a person. So there you can see intellectually, you understand that this body is in you, but in the heat of the moment, you have that confusion, that lack of wisdom, that unknowing of true reality, where when someone says something about this body, you get maybe angry or frustrated if somebody says something degrading or disparaging. Or if somebody says something positive about this body. Wow, you look so beautiful and handsome in that shirt. You look so, it brings out the colors of your eyes. You are so handsome. Oh, wow, they're talking about me, right? You get so happy when they're talking like that. That's your mind's confusion, because you understand intellectually this body is not you, right? So here's a third way. I sometimes ask students, point to yourself. Where are you? Can you point to yourself? Okay, he's pointing here, you're pointing there. That's a common place people point. Sometimes people point here, here. So you need to look at what you're pointing to. If you're pointing to yourself and you're pointing here, you're pointing to a shirt. That's what you're pointing to. So if we took off this shirt and we held it up, is that you? Is that who you are? That shirt? Say no? Okay, so let's throw away the shirt. That's not you. Where are you? Someone might point again. Well, now you're pointing to skin, right? So if we took off the skin and held it up, is that you? Is that who you are? That skin that you've got? Is that you? That's not you, right? Okay, so we throw that away. Where are you? Somebody might point again. Oh, we've got bones, we've got muscle tissue, we've got organs and fluid. None of those bits and pieces and parts are you, but that's the confusion that the mind has. It thinks that this is you, so it clings to it, right? It holds on to it, wanting to be perceived by others in a certain way. So eventually you can train your mind to move past this, where when somebody says something, either positively or negatively about this physical body, your mind's not affected by that, because your mind understands that this body is not you. Okay, so this is just introducing you to these 3 universal truths, and usually people understand the first 2 quite easily. They're pretty straightforward. Sometimes people have challenges with this third one. If you're having challenges with this third one, don't worry about it, because many people have challenges with it, and you have plenty of time to be able to learn about this, because there's other classes where I spend an entire hour and a half just talking about that, right? Because you've spent your entire life accumulating what your mind thinks is a self, personal existence view. Like when we were first born, we were all given labels. I don't know your label. My label was David, right? And now we have this label, and we kind of assign personality and character to this, right? We have national anthems, we have flags, we have sports teams that you might cheer for, like go, 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 go. Argentinian soccer team, right? When they won the World Cup, might have been like so happy, right? With that, right? So we've been taught our whole life that we are this. This is who you are. And you've been accumulating this all through your life. So to hear somebody say like, no, none of that stuff is you, the mind's like, hold on a second, right? It gets a little bit confused. So if you don't understand this 100%, no worries. There's more for you to understand on that topic. Sometimes people take 6 months to a year to understand this particular topic. Okay, but what I'm going to do here is I'm going to pause and see if you guys have questions on any of these three. You can ask questions about anything you like before we move into the Four Noble Truths. You guys have any questions? Yeah, if you can get a mic back there, it might be to grab just a couple too, because we have a bunch of people that might end up having questions at some point. And for those of you guys online, you can put your questions into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom. Or in Zoom, you can raise your hand and ask your questions that way.
Can you hear me? Yes.
Yep, sure can.
So my question is about non-self. And in my head, I understand what you say about there's no permanent self. But when somebody says, or we say as a culture, in the West anyway, that we are a culmination of everything we've ever been during our lives, that is kind of what I've always thought of as self, a culmination of everything I've been or have worked towards or whatever, or grown to. So does that then not apply to this?
That's part of the mind's confusion or its delusion, right? That we'll do things and we'll think that that's who we are. Right? So sometimes people, maybe if we've used drugs and alcohol in the past, we might have been taught that I am an alcoholic or I am an addict, right? And now in the present moment, there might be a certain amount of guilt or shame that's in the mind. This doesn't define who you are. There are certain decisions that we made in the past, but that doesn't define who you are today as a person. It's just a decision that you made to use drugs or alcohol in the past, but you're no longer making those decisions any longer. And even if you were making those decisions, that doesn't define who you are today as a person. But what the mind will do, because of its lack of wisdom, and society will tend to condition your mind to think a certain way, that you will accumulate all these things and think that this is who you are. And the Buddha is teaching you to let all that go. That none of that stuff defines who you are. And that's where you can get to the peace and the joy. Because as long as you cling to any of that stuff, you can't get to the peace and joy. Yeah. You have a question?
Hello. My question is about like no self and more like lonely path, or is something that can be like achieved in community and like belonging somewhere, or because there is no self, we don't really belong?
You actually do need to be part of a community in order to get to enlightenment, because you're going to need to model your understanding through other people's wisdom, where you wouldn't be able to just go off on your own and get to enlightenment. That's what a Buddha can do. But for you, you're going to need to be part of a community, because you're going to see like, wow, I really like how she chose to get those microphones and practice generosity and share them with people. That was really nice of her. I think I might start to do those kinds of things. So you start learning from other people just through observing their conduct. So you can't do it in isolation. You would need to do it with a community, but it comes down to your individual decisions, that your ability to get to enlightenment isn't dependent on other people, but you do need to be part of a community in order to be able to learn from the people of how to actually attain this mental state. You have a question? Yep. It just takes a second once the lights come on just to engage.
1, 2, 3. Yeah. One question, as you said, the non-self, the skin is not me, the mind is not me, the heart is not me. So actually nothing about what I'm thinking is me, So who I am.
So this is what the unenlightened mind's going to do, is that if I'm not this and I'm not this, then what am I? The mind's trying to grab onto something. It wants to hold on to something and say, this is who I am. And the Buddha is teaching you to let all that go. But it takes time for the mind to be willing to do that. It's not going to just easily just let it all go, because you've spent so long accumulating these ideas and these thoughts that these things are you. Like maybe someone is, I am a PhD graduate, or I am a doctor, I am a lawyer, I am this, I am that. So the mind's accumulated all of this conditioning, and what you're doing is you're purifying the mind and unconditioning it and realizing that these things aren't you. Because like I said, like say someone thinks I am a lawyer, and now as long as they're in that career, they feel great. But then when they retire, they feel like less of a person, right? And that career is not permanent. So as long as you cling to any of these things as who you are, when you experience change, you'll have difficulties during that period of time. So you need to get to the point where you're not grasping for something of who you think you are as a person. We've got some questions coming in on YouTube. Let me take this off. Looks like James is asking, in Buddhist literature, the belief of a creator is frequently mentioned and rejected. That's not actually true, sir. If you look at the teachings of the Buddha and the words of the Buddha talks about God as the creator. So what you're thinking is just misunderstandings that you've been exposed to. You need to go back to the original words of the Buddha to be able to see that. He says, thank you for the information. I will read the information that you shared. Okay, you're welcome. Pleased to help you. Okay. I don't see any other questions there. Okay. So now we just have one more building block to be able to help you understand the Four Noble Truths, and then we can jump in and you can have this breakthrough to understanding these discontent feelings and where they're coming from. So you need to understand what this is. This is craving, desire, attachment, wants, and expectations. This is the mind longing, yearning, chasing after the objects of your affection. The mind pulling towards something. It's like an unquenchable thirst, like the next new shiny object waiting around the corner is going to provide lasting satisfaction. So the mind chases and chases and chases and chases. It's trying to seek satisfaction externally. Right? So if you've ever been in the mall and you've been walking through the mall and you saw a brand new pair of shoes and you're like, oh, new shoes. I just can't wait to get those shoes. They're going to be so great. I just can't wait to get them on my feet. Or it might be a video game or a new mobile phone or a certain type of jewelry or something like this. The mind was longing, yearning for this thing, right? That's the craving, desire, attachment. Not the object itself, but it's the way that the mind is longing, yearning for it. Right? So it's not the shoes, because you need shoes, right? It's wise to walk around with shoes, but it's the way the mind's longing, yearning for it and trying to form inner feelings based on whether you get it or not. You guys know what I'm talking about? You experience this, right? Your mind longing, yearning, right? If I just had a boyfriend or girlfriend, everything would be perfect. I just need a boyfriend or girlfriend. Oh, if I just had more money, that's what I need, more money. Oh, a bigger house. A bigger house is going to fix everything. Let me get a bigger house, right? The mind's just longing, yearning. Oh, I know what? Let me go to Thailand. That'll fix everything. Let me go to Thailand, right? There's mind just has this unquenchable thirst that it's chasing things, okay? So these are cravings, desires, attachments, wants, expectation, holding, clinging, grasping. These are all things that the mind is doing in the unenlightened state. And we use all these words to refer to this longing, yearning. Okay, so now we can look at the Four Noble Truths. Here's where you're going to see in 4 statements the problem, the cause of the problem, the elimination of it, and the path forward. And this is what you can independently verify, just like all the other teachings. Okay, so this first noble truth is explaining the problem. Everyone that is unenlightened will experience discontentedness, meaning those conditioned feelings. Pleasant feelings, painful feelings, neither painful nor pleasant. The mind is unsteady, it's unstable, it's shaken up. The mind's going up and down and up and down. Okay, so this is the problem that the Buddha discovered, that the mind can't be calm and peaceful in the unenlightened state. It's only a matter of time before it becomes frustrated or agitated or annoyed about something. Okay, so that's the problem. The cause of this problem is here in the second noble truth. Discontentedness is caused by our own cravings, desires, attachments, because the mind wants everything to be permanent when everything in the world is impermanent. Okay, I'm going to say that a few times and I'm going to give you some examples. Discontentedness, the pleasant, painful, and neither painful nor pleasant feelings, is caused by craving, desire, attachment, the longing, the yearning, the chasing after the objects of your affection, because the mind wants things to be permanent, when in reality, everything around you is impermanent. So essentially, the mind chases and chases and chases and chases. And if it gets what it wants, it gets pleasant feelings. Happiness, excitement, elation, thrill, exhilaration, euphoria. But if the mind doesn't get what it wants, then it gets painful feelings like anger, sadness, frustration, and others. Right? And then there's the neither painful nor pleasant feelings as well. So here's some examples. Think back to like a boyfriend or girlfriend. Maybe your first boyfriend or girlfriend, that, oh boy, when you guys first got together, maybe it was so great, it was so wonderful, it was so lovely. You guys were going to the movies, you were going to dinner, you were going out to the park, you were having great conversations, you might have been having sex, intimate contact. Wow, all these pleasant feelings. But then at some point you guys broke up and you're angry, you're frustrated or agitated or annoyed. This is because the mind's craving permanence, wanting this person to be permanent in your life. It wasn't your love that was causing that. That's your care, your concern, your genuine interest in seeing this being be well. That's not what causes you to be angry or frustrated. What was causing it is your mind was holding on to this person, wanting them to be permanent. And as long as they were in your life, you had a certain amount of comfort. But then when they were no longer in your life, your mind had this longing, yearning for them to be in your life, wanting them to be permanent. And when your mind was getting what it wants, it felt pleasant feelings, but it wasn't getting what it wanted. It got the painful feelings. I'll show you some other examples with relationships. Think about like grandma and grandpa, mom or dad, brothers and sisters. If you've had people close to you that have died, you might have grieved. You might have felt sorrow. Right? You might have been sad or angry or frustrated. When they were alive, your mind was getting what you wanted, what you were craving. You were having certain pleasant feelings. But then when you weren't getting what you wanted, the mind experienced the anger or frustration or the grief or the sorrow or the sadness because the mind wasn't getting that permanence that it was craving. Grandma and grandpa are impermanent. Because they were born, they had to die. Right? Mom and dad, they were born, they had to die. Right? They're not going to be permanently in your life. So as long as your mind's craving permanence, when you experience death, you'll grieve and you'll have sorrow and sadness. Or if you've ever been to a wedding and maybe you were crying and upset or grieving or someone around you was, this is the mind craving permanence. Because here goes brother and sister off in the world with somebody else, and now mom and dad and other people are crying and grieving. Well, all that's happening here is this person's having another relationship. They're going off into the world in a new relationship. But mom and dad's mind is holding on. Grandma and grandpa, brothers and sisters. That's my brother. That's my sister. How dare you take them away from me? Right? That's what the mind's doing, is it's holding on and craving permanence. If you can think back to when you got dropped off at university, if you went to college, or maybe if you could think back to getting dropped off at grade school, or if you've ever seen that occur where children get dropped off at school, right? The children's mind and even the parents' mind can be crying and grieving. They drop off their kid at school. Well, your love is a genuine interest in seeing this being be well. That's the reason why you're taking them to school, because you would like to see them be well and get an education, right? That's not what's causing the sadness and the grief. What's causing the sadness and the grief is the mind's holding on and craving permanence, wanting this child to be in your life permanently. Or the child is wanting mom and dad to be in their life permanently. And here they go, 3 years old, out into the world, or 5 years old, out into the world by themselves, and their mind grieves because they thought mom and dad was permanent. And now they go out in the world by themselves without mom and dad, right? So this is where the discontent feelings are coming from, is the mind is craving permanence, but yet everything around you is impermanent. It's constantly changing. Here's some other examples that don't involve relationships to maybe help you see this even more closely. Let's just say you got a brand new car. You've been saving up for this brand new car for a long time. It's a perfect car. It's your dream car, and you're driving this car off the parking lot of the dealership, and people are looking at you like, wow, look at her, she's so successful. Wow, look at him, he's so successful. And you're so proud driving your car down the road. And now you park it at a store, and you go inside, and you come out, and there's a scratch on your car. Oh man, you might be so frustrated. It's not the scratch that's causing that. And it's not the person who scratched your car. What's causing the frustration is the mind's craving permanence. It wants this car to look permanently beautiful, when in reality, this car is impermanent. It's going to experience this, right? The paint's going to fade. The tires are going to need to be changed. The upholstery is going to get ripped and torn. This is all impermanence. And if your mind craves permanence, when you experience impermanence, the mind doesn't like that. So one of the ways to say this is that the mind craves permanence. But another way to say it is that the mind does not like impermanence. The unenlightened mind doesn't like change. Think about your life. Whenever things have been changing, that's the most difficult times that you've experienced. Change living locations, you change relationships, you change jobs or occupations. These were very challenging times for you because your mind didn't like that change, because it doesn't understand the universal truth of impermanence. It lacks that wisdom. It has that ignorance or that unknowing of true reality, right? So by you understanding true reality, that things are constantly changing, and training your mind to not hold on and crave permanence, you can actually solve this problem. But you first need to understand what is causing it. What's causing it is this craving, desire, attachment, this craving for permanence. Okay, so this is the intellectual part. But now don't believe it. You need to be able to see the truth for yourself through reflection. So think about a recent time where you've recently been angry or frustrated or irritated or annoyed or some other feeling. Might have been this morning, might have been yesterday or last week. Think about that situation. Now, at that time, you might have been trying to blame somebody else for what you're experiencing, because that's what the unenlightened mind typically does. But look at it with these fresh eyes. What was it that you wanted? What were you craving? What were you longing, yearning for? And if you would have got it, you would have been happy. But since you didn't get what you wanted, you were angry or sad or frustrated or some other discontent feeling. And you can look at this and you should be able to independently verify it. And if you can't, let me know and I will help you. Because I've had plenty of students that ask for help. Right? One time a student called me up and they said, David, I went to work today and my house looked beautiful. I came home about 8 hours later and my wife had this craft project all over the house. And I walked in and I got immediately frustrated. How did my mind cause this? Because that's what I'm teaching you, that it's your own mind that's causing these feelings. They said, how did my mind cause this? I wasn't even there. She's the one who messed up the house. Didn't she cause me to be frustrated? Nope. Your mind's craving permanence. You went to work with the expectation that the house was going to look exactly the same way when you came back home. The only thing that happened was change. That's it. It just changed. There was just impermanence. And just like your house can't look that way permanently, however it looks now with this craft project all over the house, that's not permanent either. Your wife will put it away. Maybe you'll help her, right? But if the mind craves permanence, when you're in that situation, you'll have frustration or agitation or annoyance. So you should be able to look at your life and you should be able to see this. Like say you're so excited to go to Thailand and you just can't wait to go to Thailand, and you show up to the airport and your flight's delayed or canceled. You'll be frustrated, right? Well, all that's happened is impermanence. Not every flight can take off on time, because that would be permanence. There's going to be a maintenance issue, a crew issue, a weather issue. These things are going to happen. So if your mind craves this permanence, when you're in that situation, you'll have difficulties and struggles. Or think back when we were a child. We were like, Mommy, Daddy, can I have chocolate and ice cream? They were like, sure, little David, you can have chocolate and ice cream. Here you go. I'm like, you're the best mommy and daddy ever. Thank you so much for my chocolate and ice cream. And then the next day, Mommy and Daddy, can I have chocolate and ice cream? Sure, here you go, little David. Oh, you're the best mommy and daddy ever, right? But then the third day, it's like, Mommy and Daddy, can I have chocolate and ice cream? No, you can't have any. You're the worst mommy and daddy ever. right? This is the mind craving permanence. As long as the mind got what it wanted, it was happy. But that's not permanent. That chocolate and ice cream is not permanent. So when the mind didn't get its chocolate and ice cream, it experienced the painful feelings, right? And it attributes it to something external. The mind thinks that it's mom and dad that are causing these feelings, and now the mind wants to push them away or push a situation away. Or you might want to be bitter and harsh and hostile to this person. Or you might try to put your expectations on people and try to control them. Because the mind firmly believes in the unenlightened state, because of its lack of wisdom, that these feelings are coming from something external. So the mind's trying to push away, be bitter, harsh, and hostile, or put your expectations on people. And you can see that that doesn't solve the problem. So what the Buddha teaches you is that it's your own mind that's causing these feelings. So if you get happy when it's sunny outside and then it rains and you get frustrated or angry, the only thing that's happened is change. And you can see that there's no other person involved there. So it can't be other people that are causing you to be angry, because there's no other person involved in going from sun to rain. Or if your bank account balance is here and you're happy, and then it goes down here and you're sad or frustrated, the only thing that's happened is change. That's it. It's just impermanence. It's just changed. But your mind is craving permanence. So you should be able to independently verify this through looking in your own life. And this can be really eye-opening. This is the breakthrough. Because every time you've ever been arguing with people or yelling and hollering at them or in arguments with them, trying to convince them that what they are doing is making you angry and they have to stop doing what they're doing. I'm sure you've been in those arguments before where you've tried to convince people that they had to stop doing what they're doing or else you're going to keep getting angry. It was actually your mind all along, the entire time. It doesn't mean that they were doing something wise, because they truly could have been doing something unwise, but that's not what was causing your anger. The mind was craving for everyone to do things exactly the same way. It's craving permanence. And it's just not possible for everybody to do things exactly the same way. So you need to be able to have this breakthrough to see what the cause of these discontent feelings is within your own mind, the craving, desire, attachment, and independently verify that. Then the Buddha teaches the third noble truth. If you understand the cause of your discontent feelings is craving, desire, attachment, then the third noble truth says, hey, you can eliminate this discontentedness if you eliminate the craving, desire, attachment. If you eliminate the cause, which is the craving, desire, attachment, if you eliminate that, then you eliminate the effect, right? It's a cause and effect, that because there's cravings, there's going to be discontentedness. But if you eliminate that, cravings, desires, attachments, there's no discontentedness in the mind. So the third noble truth is showing you that when you eliminate your longing, yearning, your craving, you eliminate your discontentedness. And you can independently verify this too. Because think back to that boyfriend or girlfriend that you guys broke up with. You were angry and frustrated, but at some point you were like, you know what? If he wants to be with someone else, so be it. And you let him go. Or you're like, you know what? If she wants to live somewhere else in the world, so be it. And your mind let go. And that's where your peace and your joy came back, right? But as long as your mind was holding on, wanting this person in your life, wanting them to be permanent, you were maybe lonely or bored, or you were missing this person, or you were angry or frustrated. But when you let go, that's where you're like, whoa, hey, I can go out in the world and still have fun. I can enjoy this life, right? So when you train your mind to let go, that's where the peace and joy comes in. And the way to train your mind to do that is in the fourth noble truth. The path to eliminating discontentedness is the Eightfold Path. That's the complete, perfect plan that's going to train your mind to eliminate this longing, yearning, and chasing after the objects of your affection. It starts with right view. What right view is understanding that it's your own mind that's causing these feelings. Because if you go around the world still thinking that it's other people who are causing these feelings, you'll try to change other people. This is what the unenlightened mind usually does. It goes around and tries to change everybody else, thinking that that's how you're going to get to peace and joy. But you'll never get to peace and joy that way, because there's 8 billion people in the world, and you can't train 8 billion people in the world to do things your way. So right view is to understand the real problem is inside one's own mind, right? What wrong view would be is to blame other people for the feelings that you're experiencing. And that's what we tend to do because of our lack of wisdom. We walk around with wrong view, where we're blaming everybody else for what we're experiencing. So you can establish right view, where you can now understand what's truly causing these feelings. So the way that you practice this is now and forever, whenever you're discontent, instead of trying to blame other people, look inward and try to figure out what is it that you're longing, yearning for. Because if you keep blaming other people, you'll never solve this. But if you sit down and have a conversation with yourself and be like, what am I longing for? What am I craving? What am I wanting? And if you can figure that out and you can let it go, that's where your peace and your joy will come back. Right? And eventually you get to the point where your mind doesn't grab on and want things to be permanent because your mind is well trained. But right now you have certain cravings in your mind. You want things to be a certain way. So you're going to need to train your mind to let go. So you can be reflective. You can be introspective. You can look inward rather than looking outward. When you're looking outward for the problem, you'll never actually fix it. But when you look inward, that's where you actually be able to fix it. And this is what it means to have right view, is to start looking inward, understand what the true cause of the problem is within one's own mind. And then what you do is you gradually learn the rest of this, and that's what's going to completely train the mind. And I'm going to be teaching this on Tuesday morning. I have a course next week that starts Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. And I'm going to teach all the foundational teachings. And one of the things we're going to teach is this Eightfold Path. I'm going to teach the entire path from beginning to end. So if you guys would like to attend, you're welcome to. I teach it here. I teach it online. It's going to be live streamed. I've taught it many times. It's been recorded. So if you're not going to be around, you can watch the recordings. But if you'd like to come on this week, you can come for all of it or some of it. It's up to you. I'll be here teaching throughout the whole week. So if you'd like to learn this whole thing, you can. Okay? So this is the core. This is the beginning. This is like the trail marker. If you're going hiking and there's like a trail marker at the beginning of the trail, helping you to understand what you're going to face on this trail, this is that. This is the beginning. In 4 simple statements, you can understand the problem, the cause, the elimination, and the path forward of how to fix it, right? And now the rest of the journey is learning the entire path and implementing it in your day-to-day life and gradually transforming your mind, training it to let go, let go, let go. So this is what I have to share with you guys. I'll just kind of see if you guys have questions. If you'd like to ask anything about the Four Noble Truths, feel free.
Hello? I think it's on.
Yeah.
So when I think of discontent and desire, I understand what you're talking about in terms of like this context, how it can be harmful and how it can be desirable to sort of eliminate that state. But I also think of discontent and desire as forces that can motivate you to become a better person. So, for example, I'm discontented with my current state of health. I want to become healthier. I want to learn a new instrument or a new language. I want to become a better person in some way. And that discontent with my current state can, for anyone, can motivate you to learn new skills, become a better person. It sort of drives you forward. So you're not talking about that. That's a different type of discontent, correct?
No, that's what I'm talking about. Okay. So what you're used to is being motivated by those things. That's what the unenlightened mind does, is that it craves, it wants that bigger house. So now it gets all these skills, it works really hard at this job, and now it tries to get that bigger house. And if it gets it, it feels happy, and if it doesn't, it feels frustrated or sad. That's what the unenlightened mind does through its chasing, and that's how it gets motivated. But when you scale all that back, what the unenlightened mind does, because it's untrained, is it will usually swing all the way to the other side, where now it's dull and lethargic and it's unmotivated, right? Yep. What the Buddha is teaching you to do is come to the middle, where you're not chasing, but you're not dull and lethargic and lazy either. But instead of being motivated by craving, desire, attachment, and chasing after the objects of your affection, you have enthusiasm, ambition, and motivation based in wise decisions, that you now make a wise decision, that you understand that, hey, I don't know how to eat very healthy food, and that's not something I learned growing up, and I would like to have a healthy body. Let me go learn about nutrition. Or, hey, you know what? I've got all this free time. I've always been interested in learning an instrument. Let me go learn this instrument. Because the way that craving, desire, attachment works is you'll only be motivated to do that thing as long as the craving is in the mind. And that craving is going to burn out because it's impermanent. This is why somebody will bounce around from thing to thing to thing to thing, never really giving it its full focus. And the mind will be shaken up and unsteady and unstable. But when you let that go, you can learn to come to the middle. Now you can do this sustainably. You can sustainably work towards this with goals, objectives, or interest and ambition and enthusiasm and motivation. And you can do it long term because you're not doing it in order to chase after pleasant feelings based in craving, but you're basing it in wise decisions. So for example, like the Buddha, he got to enlightenment at the age of 35, and he taught these teachings all the way until the age of 80 for 40 years or 45 years. He never gave up. Even his last breath, he was still teaching. His very last words was a teaching. But if he was doing it out of craving, and he showed up to a class and maybe there's 100 people, he would have been excited. But then if there's only one person, he would be frustrated or agitated or annoyed. And now it's painful for him to do it. So now he's not wanting to do it anymore. Whereas if you're not doing it based in craving, desire, attachment, you're just knowing that, hey, this was wise for me to do this thing. Now let me do it. You can actually do it long-term, sustainably, because you're not basing your feelings on what is transpiring here. You're just working towards a certain goal or objective and wise decision-making rather than chasing these pleasant feelings. So the mind needs to be transformed to see this as a problem, to now be able to learn something that it hasn't done before, which is to pursue things in wise decisions rather than chasing these pleasant feelings. And that's the transformation that needs to occur.
Okay. Yeah. Makes sense. Thank you.
Yeah. And I'll just add to that is when the mind is discontent, it's shaken up, and it will tend to make unwise decisions that is going to lead to unwholesome results. But when you can come to the middle where the mind's calm and steady and peaceful, now you can gradually pursue your goals and objectives with wise decisions, and you'll actually attain them. But you're not basing your feelings on that at that point. So you actually will be more capable of attaining your goals and objectives when you do it from the middle way than when you chase after it with craving, desire, attachment. Okay, let me see if we have any other questions here. Okay, it looks like Chris has a question here. Get this off here. Chris is asking, how does seeing one's own craving help a practitioner let them go? Is part of the reason it's challenging to let go of a craving is because they are not seen? Yeah, in the unenlightened mind, it doesn't have the wisdom of craving, desire, attachment, and it doesn't have enough mindfulness or awareness of mind to be able to see them. The mind is clouded and distorted because it's chasing those pleasant feelings. It sees the brand new pair of shoes in the window and it just wants those pleasant feelings and it chases after them. And it's almost like locked on. It's just like a radar lock, and it just runs towards those pleasant feelings, not realizing that 3 months from now, when those shoes get damaged or destroyed or someone steals them, you're going to have painful feelings. It doesn't realize that. All it sees is, I just want those pleasant feelings, so it chases after them. So the mind's, because of its lack of wisdom, it's distorted and it's confused, not realizing that it's not these shoes that are going to bring you ultimate happiness. So if you go into the store and they have your size, you get really happy. But if you go into the store and they don't have your size, you'll be frustrated or agitated because the mind's craving that permanence. So the mind's distortion and lack of wisdom is going to keep it chasing and chasing and chasing and chasing. And that's why questions are so important, because this stuff doesn't necessarily make sense when you first hear it, because your mind has done something completely different than what I'm talking about your entire life. And now somebody's explaining something different to you, and it's like, hold on a second. This is going to need some time to think about this. So you need to be able to understand. And that's where you're cultivating wisdom, to be able to see the truth for yourself and not believing what I say, but be able to see it for yourself. Okay, let me see if we have any other questions here. All right, I don't see anything else. All right. All right. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to end class with this, is what I've already shared with you, that what the teachings of the Buddha are is it's to heal from what hurt you so that you never need to hurt ever again. And what's hurting you is inside your own mind. You can see that through the Four Noble Truths, that it's your own craving, your desire, your attachment, your longing, your yearning. You don't have to go around and fix everybody else. It lightens your load, right? Because going around and teaching 8 billion people to do things your way, you'd have to have a massive training program, right? You'd have to have places all over the world. You'd have to have books, and you'd have to have people committed to teaching your methods of doing things in the world. You can't accomplish that, right? But now you only need to train one mind. There's only one mind you need to train. So you've just lightened your load. Do you know who the one mind is you need to train? Who's the one mind? Yeah. Your own. That's it. That's it. That's going to be challenging enough, right? But that's the one mind that you need to train, because you can't force other people to change. It's just not possible. But you can change your own mind, but you just need the training. So you can heal from what hurt you so that you never need to hurt ever again. And the way that you can do that is we offer continued support here. If you would like to continue to learn and grow and develop, there's books, audiobooks, videos, podcasts, quizzes. This is all available for you at no cost. You can get our books by downloading them for free on our website. You can take it and go print it if you like. You can get printed versions here by just reimbursing us for the printing cost, or you can get it on Amazon if your country has access to Amazon. I suggest you start with the first book, Volume 1, Developing a Life Practice, The Path That Leads to Enlightenment. This is the best place to start. I've had some students that tell me they read this 8 to 12 different times, and they're learning new things every single time that they read it. So this isn't the kind of book that you read once and you toss aside. You're going to be spending some time with this to be able to gradually learn it. So you can get it online or these other ways as well, and it's at no cost. Here, you're just reimbursing us for the printing cost so we can go buy more books for other people. Then there's in-person and online classes, courses, and retreats. These are also available at no cost. You can find them on our website. That's like a central hub to be able to access all of these. We have what's called the group learning program, which is an ongoing program, either in person or online, where I gradually walk you through this first book in a 7-month period. I gradually go chapter by chapter by chapter each Sunday, helping students to understand that. And then on Wednesdays, I teach meditation and then open up to questions that you have. So that's a program that you might decide to go into. Then there's the Words of the Buddha, The Path to Enlightenment. The Words of the Buddha, the Pali Canon and English Study Group. This is where we study volumes 2 through 13. But normally students have a foundation and a framework before they go into that. In terms of classes, courses, and retreats, next week is one of those courses where Monday through Friday, we have that foundation in the Path to Enlightenment course. That's a great place to start, so you can learn in that one as well. And then these are like kind of ongoing programs to kind of trickle the teachings in little by little. That course next week is essentially like the first 2.5 months of this. But rather than doing it little by little each Sunday, you're doing it at one time. So you're getting kind of like a big dose at one time. Then there's personal guidance, where you can actually schedule appointments with me, either in person if we're in the same city together, or if you're traveling, we can meet online in Zoom. You can get on our website and you can schedule appointments, and we'll meet face to face. Because it's one thing learning in these classes, but it's a whole other thing relating it to your day-to-day life. So a teacher is, like I mentioned, kind of like a life coach. Some people might even think of a Buddhist teacher like a therapist, but it's you doing the work. And the more that we get to know about your life, we can give you very targeted feedback. We never tell you what you should or shouldn't be doing in your life. That's up to you to decide. But if you came to me and you were like, hey, David, I'm having this difficulty with my brother or my mom or my dad or my boss. Here's the challenge that I'm experiencing. What do you recommend? I might give you 2 or 3 different things, and then you decide, up to you, right? And then I explain to you the teachings of the Buddha. So if you need personal guidance, which a student who's going to get to enlightenment, they're going to need personal guidance at different times in their journey. So that's available for you at no cost too, either in person or online. And then we have a Facebook group where students will ask questions. They will post questions in there, and then I answer it for them. Nobody else answers it, it's just me. So you can get help 4 different ways. You can ask questions in class, you can post in our Facebook group, you can send me a private message, or you can schedule personal guidance and we'll meet face to face and I can help you any of those 4 ways. So these are the different ways you can get help, and it's all available at no cost. Okay, so no matter where I teach, whether it's here in Chiang Mai or I travel around the world and I teach different places, you can always come to classes. It's always available for you at no cost. Okay, so what I'm going to do is just end by thanking you guys for being interested in learning the teachings of the Buddha. Thank you for everyone online as well. If you would like to learn more, there's help for you here to be able to heal from what hurt you so that you never need to hurt ever again. Just reach out and let me know if you need any guidance or any suggestions. We have our website and all these other places that you can get access, but feel free, you're always welcome to talk to me. So whatever you choose to do today, have a very wonderful and lovely rest of your day. Perhaps I'll see you in one of these future events. Be well and take care. Okay? Sawadee Kap. Sawadee Kap. Thank you again for watching. Enjoy your meditation. Look forward to seeing you online and answering any questions that you might have. Thank you so much.